What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing the strange and suspicious celebrity death of Brittany Murphy. It's been a long time coming, guys, as requested. Let's dive right in. Brittany Murphy was born Brittany Ann Bertolotti in Atlanta, Georgia on November 10th, 1977. Her parents were Sharon Murphy and Angelo Bertolotti, and even before Brittany was born, these two had a very interesting relationship. Now, Angelo was born and raised in New York City, and even though he ended up owning a nightclub in Florida, it was rumored that he was actually mob connected. He was a mobster, definitely involved in organized crime. It's been said that Sharon's attraction was more to the lifestyle of the mobster than to the man, Angelo himself. Specifically, the loads of cash and money that this lifestyle allows someone to accrue. The pair got married very quickly after meeting, but after a few years, Sharon kind of tired of always having to be alone because Angelo was in and out of prison due to being involved in organized crime. The couple divorced when Brittany was just 2 years old, and her mother took her to live to Edison, New Jersey, and this is where they stayed right up until Brittany was about to start high school. It was at this point where Brittany decided that she wanted to pursue an acting career, and her mother totally right from the door backed her up on this, and they picked up and moved to Los Angeles. That's pretty damn supportive. Later on in life, Brittany would credit her mother with much of her success, stating, quote, "My mother never tried to stifle my creativity. When I asked her to move to California, she sold everything and moved out here for me. She always believed in me." End quote. Brittany and her mother made this move in 1991 when Brittany was around 13 years old. It's said that Brittany and her mother considered themselves soulmates. Now, not that kind of soulmates, obviously. I have a very different opinion of soulmates than what most people think. I don't think it's a romantic thing. And I totally understand this dynamic because I consider my toddler my soulmate. And again, that's not a romantic thing. That just means that you have a deeper connection with someone, a soul connection with someone. And it can be anyone in your life or even someone you haven't yet met. So Brittany and Sharon considered themselves soulmates. Moving to California with Brittany probably wasn't a huge stretch for Sharon, who assumedly thought that this was the logical next step. At the age of just 5 years old, Brittany had attended the Vern Fowler School of Dance and Theater Arts in Colonia, New Jersey. She had been trained in singing, acting, and dancing right up until the move to California. So from the time she was 5 years old until she was about 13. As soon as Brittany got her first acting job and started bringing in even small amounts of money, it's said that she immediately took over the role of taking care of all of the bills and the financial responsibilities for herself and her mother. And while the relationship quickly changed from sisters, soulmates, best friends to mother-daughter, it's not like you would think, because Brittany ended up taking on the mother role and Sharon ended up taking on the daughter role. So that's just to give you a little bit of background information, as I normally do in these videos, because these videos are a series about strange and suspicious deaths of celebrities. There's a lot of information in most of these cases, and this one is no different. So now that we got the background out of the way, kind of set the stage a little bit, let's jump into the events leading up to Brittany Murphy's strange and suspicious death. In 1995, Brittany shot to fame with the success of her second movie, Clueless, which developed a sort of cult following. Right after this, she became a much sought-after name in Hollywood, and her star was on the rise. She went on to star in many wonderful movies, and she guested on a few TV shows as well. My personal favorite was Sin City. Let me know if you have a favorite Brittany Murphy movie. Let me know in the comments. Around 8 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, December 20th, 2009, a frantic call was placed to Los Angeles County 911 from a house in the Hollywood Hills. The woman who made the call would later be identified as the mother of 32-year-old Hollywood actress and superstar Brittany Murphy. Initially, she stated to the dispatcher that her daughter had passed out, and The dispatcher continued to ask questions, pressing for information, because that's what they're supposed to try to do, to kind of get a handle on the situation, not only so the police can know what they're walking into, but also so they know what kind of help to send, and so the paramedics can kind of be prepared. However, Sharon Murphy was absolutely beside herself and wasn't answering any of the questions and was just pleading with them to get help there quickly. Eventually, though, after much prodding, the dispatcher is able to get the mother to tell him that the 32-year-old female, is not breathing. Upon hearing this, the dispatcher finally realizes that this is not someone who just passed out. This is an extremely emergent situation, and he told her to check for vomit or liquid coming out of the mouth, and her mother replied with, quote, "Oh, she threw up tons of stuff, tons of liquid and water," end quote. This is where the husband of the victim entered the room and started checking her mouth and started administering CPR. Keep in mind at this point that the operator still has no idea that the victim is a celebrity, let alone Brittany Murphy. You can hear the absolute devastation and shock in Sharon Murphy's voice as she screams and cries, barely intelligible, into the phone, quote, "Brittany, please come back," end quote. It took just a few minutes for the paramedics to arrive, and they were met at the front door by Sharon Murphy, who quickly led them up the stairs and into the master bathroom where her daughter, 32-year-old famous movie star Brittany Murphy, was collapsed and laying unconscious, not breathing, on the bathroom floor. At this point, Brittany's husband, Simon Monjack, is still trying to administer CPR, and this is finally when everyone realizes, like, oh my gosh, this passed out, non-breathing, possibly deceased woman lying on the floor is none other than Brittany Murphy. After a string of failed relationships and with a tendency to date her leading men, such as Ashton Kutcher and Eminem, just to name a few, in 2006, Brittany finally met a man who would change not only her love life, but her entire world forever. His name was Simon Monjack. Brittany was sent a script, and it was based on the book The White Hotel. When she read it, she absolutely loved it. She fell in love with the story, and she decided she absolutely had to meet the man who wrote the screenplay, who turned out to be Simon. The two had known each other kind of in passing, but they couldn't even really be called acquaintances until they ended up working on this project together, and they really bonded and had this really intense connection. It's said that once they started working on this, things just kind of clicked for both of them, and very quickly they each fell head over heels for the other one. Simon was not only 8 years older than Brittany, but he was very, very protective of her. He felt like her protector. Simon Monjack was seemingly a very sophisticated, well-read, and well-spoken Englishman who Brittany seemed to be absolutely entranced with. Simon's mother said the feeling was mutual, though, and that the very day he met Brittany for the first time, he called her, his mother, and told her he met a, quote, "crazy, crazy girl," end quote, who he felt he was already head over heels for. His mother replied to him, quote, "Oh, Simon, you've only just met her," end quote. However, by all accounts, like I just said, they were mutually in love at first sight, and the rest, as they say, is history. Unfortunately, in this case, it's extremely tragic. Simon's mother also later stated that she didn't even know Simon and Brittany had gotten married until after they'd tied the knot. They had, for some reason, kept it a secret. She said she was disappointed by the way they went about it because, of course, she wanted to be there to watch her son get married, but she accepted it, and she was very, very happy for them. She just loved Brittany, and she accepted the fact that her son was impulsive and did stuff like this, so it didn't shock her. She was just a little upset, but she quickly got over it and absolutely fell in love, too, with her new daughter-in-law. His mother stated, too, that though this was her son's third marriage, this one, she actually knew he was finally in love with the woman he was marrying. So very quickly after meeting, the couple gets married, and then they purchase this $3.9 million mansion in the Hollywood Hills, and Sharon Murphy moves right in with them. Side note, this $3.9 million mansion in the Hollywood Hills used to belong to another Brittany, my favoriteest Brittany of all, Britney Spears. The purchasing of this house was only 2 years before the 911 call made by Sharon Murphy about Brittany being deceased on the bathroom floor. Speaking of which, we need to go back to that scene for a minute. And when the paramedics arrived at the scene and started checking her vitals, they realized it was looking pretty grim for Brittany Murphy. All of a sudden, though, after Initially thinking she was already deceased, they couldn't get a pulse, they couldn't find the heartbeat. They felt a very, very weak pulse. This was all the paramedics needed to give them a little bit of hope that she could perhaps be saved. She was immediately whisked away by ambulance and brought to the nearest hospital. Her life was basically hanging by a thread, with no one knowing which way the ball was going to roll, so to speak. The tiniest tilt in either direction and she would live or she would die. Following behind the ambulance is Sharon and Simon, taking, I'm sure, what would be the longest ride of their lives, while Brittany fought for her own life just a few feet in front of them in the ambulance. By the time they all arrived at Cedars-Sinai Hospital, Brittany was no longer breathing, and even that little weakest bit of pulse was no longer there. Despite the doctors and hospital staff's best efforts to revive her and restart her heart, Brittany Murphy was declared dead at 10:05 a.m., only 2 hours after the initial 911 call. The doctor told her mother and husband that there was really nothing he could have done, and he did do everything in his power to try and save her, and he apologized. So Sharon Murphy has just lost not only her only child, but her soulmate, who she considered to be her soulmate. Simon Monjack had just lost the absolute love of his life. They had both lost Brittany, who was each of their best friend in the entire world. Sharon was obviously distraught, despondent, devastated, and Simon seemed to be a bit in shock as he called his mother and kind of casually and simply stated, quote, "Brittany has died," end quote. He later stated, quote, "That's my wife. She was everything to me. I just couldn't believe it, to be honest with you," end quote. Obviously, the press had gotten a hold of the news of Brittany's passing, and they swarmed to Simon and Brittany's home. It was all over the news stations. It was in all of the magazines. This amazingly talented actress who had her whole life ahead of her and this burgeoning career had died so incredibly young at just 32 years old. People wanted answers. How did something like this happen? What did she die from? So while the public and her fans were obviously shocked and wondering how did this happen, the Los Angeles County Police Department had opened their own investigation, determined to find answers to this tragedy. Ed Winter was the assistant chief of the LA County Coroner's Office at the time, and he was the man who oversaw all the high-profile and celebrity autopsies. He did all of the celebrity and high-profile death investigations for the county. He stated that the first thing he did was obtain a copy of Brittany's medical records and her admissions blood. So when she was first admitted to the hospital, they took blood, even though, she wasn't breathing. He then proceeded to go to her residence where she lived with her mother and husband. Of course, upon his arrival at the mansion, the media were questioning him, asking him what was going on, how did Brittany Murphy die, what happened at such a young age, was there foul play involved? And he told them that it was far too early to determine anything. He hadn't even examined the body, he hadn't examined the scene yet. So he told them that it was far too early in the investigation to give any information or to draw any conclusions, and he would release the information once the autopsy was performed. Within just a couple hours of Brittany's death, Simon Monjack was interviewed by the coroner. According to what Simon told them, Brittany had been sick and suffering from flu symptoms. Detective Winter stated that Simon seemed, quote, "strange in his mannerisms," end quote. And according to Winter as well, Monjack appeared to be, quote, "under the influence of something," end quote, and wouldn't sit down. He wouldn't stop pacing back and forth throughout the entire interview. He also stated that while you can never tell, as we know, how someone's going to act or react in this kind of situation, there's no handbook, and you can't really tell a person's guilt or innocence or culpability just by how they act, right? We've learned that. He said, though, Monjack was especially strange to him because he still seemed mostly confused about everything. He was incessantly rambling these nonsensical things, and it seemed to him, like, to Winter, like, Monjack didn't understand that Brittany was permanently gone, like that she was dead. Simon Monjack did not want an autopsy, and Winter explained to Simon that an autopsy is basic protocol for any death unless the family can provide reasons that are religious in nature as to why one can't be done. And this upset Simon Monjack greatly. Like, he was really upset by this, and he vehemently denied wanting an autopsy. Like, he tried to fight an autopsy for Brittany. So this was extremely suspicious, not just to investigators, but also to the media and the public. Brittany Murphy was only 32 years old, and she was relatively healthy. She was basically in good health. 32-year-olds don't just wake up one day and randomly die of the flu. While Winter and other investigators searched the couple's residence, they found 90 or more prescription bottles on Simon's side of the bed, like on his nightstand. They were all in his name. And even more prescription pill bottles on Brittany's side in her name. Winter later stated that there was a massive amount of prescription pills in the home, mainly in the couple's bedroom. These medications weren't anything to play with either. Things like habit-forming painkillers like Percocet. There were also benzos like Xanax, anti-anxiety medications, medications for depression. I mean, think about that. 90 just in Simon's name. That's a lot of medication, and all different things too. I mean, the first thing I think of when I hear that is doctor shopping. There were also bottles of pills in the bathroom's medicine cabinets, in the couple's dresser drawers, on the other dressers. They were scattered all over the place. Pill bottles, pill bottles, pill bottles. When the media finally got a hold of the information about all of the highly addictive, habit-forming, and possibly deadly, if mixed together, prescription drugs found in her home, this is when reports started to come in to the media and to investigators about Brittany acting strangely on the sets of some of the movies that she was working on right before she passed away. Instances of her seemingly being high on the set, not being able to remember her lines, things which, as far as the public and also the other people in the entertainment industry were concerned, were very out of character for the happy-go-lucky, bubbly, and sweet Brittany Murphy. She had a good girl type persona in the business, and this came as a shock to anyone who knew her. The director of the movie Spun, in which Brittany Murphy starred, even alleged that while he knew she wasn't using while filming, she was definitely, quote, smoking crack with Simon Monjack after the fact, end quote. According to sources close to Brittany, she was having trouble with her career because as her career was steadily declining, she was still acting very demanding and wanting to be treated on set as she was when she was an A-list star, like back in her 8 Mile days. Brittany was eventually abandoned by her agent and management, and she just wasn't getting any roles anymore. So basically, she was acting too much like a diva, and nobody wanted to deal with or work with her anymore. She gained a reputation on set for being difficult, making demands for impossible things. It didn't escape anyone who knew her's attention that the erratic behavior and alleged drug use started almost immediately upon Brittany meeting and then marrying Simon Monjack. Eventually, she was left with nothing but B-movie roles. She was depressed, she was angered by this, that she was forced to take roles that she never in her life dreamed she would have to take, and she felt like she was lowering herself just to get a paycheck and to kind of stay relevant in the business. Brittany's friends would later state that Simon controlled who Brittany spoke to, who she spent her time with, what agents she associated with. He picked and chose her management teams. So he was basically not just controlling her life, but her career as well. And many people think this is the reason that her career tanked so quickly and drastically, just went downhill right upon meeting him, because he almost immediately took control of all of this and he kind of ruined her career, allegedly. It was later said by quite a few people that if you wanted to get to Brittany Murphy, you had to go through Simon Monjack. And this was just one of the many reasons given for why right after Brittany passed away, not only the public, but people that knew the couple, especially those who were friends with Brittany who weren't particularly fond of Simon, started contacting investigators or even speculating amongst themselves or in the media that Simon had something to do with her death. Suspicion about Simon being involved in Brittany's death was mounting very rapidly, and everyone started scrutinizing his past while waiting for the autopsy results. And what people were finding out about him and his past just added to the ever-growing suspicion. His wife was a British TV producer named Simone. After Brittany's death, Simone came forward with some information that made Simon look really, really bad. Allegedly, Simon told Simone that he was the heir to a steel mill and that he owned several $1 million or more pieces of art. She claims that immediately after getting married, Simon moved in with her into her residence, of course, and he became immediately lazy and, quote, a slob. And it took only a few weeks for them to separate. And as Simone realized she had been duped and she wanted out of the relationship, he had married her under false pretenses. According to Simon's mother, Linda Monjack, her family was very, very wealthy, but none of the money was Simon's, and also none of it was accessible to him. So anything that he had kind of made on his own. Linda Monjack states that it was Simon who broke off the relationship with Simone, while the official story was that Simone got sick of the relationship and she was upset that he had lied to her about his wealth and what he did for a living and also how he was acting, and she broke it off. Either way, 2 weeks after getting married, and they were finite. They actually divorced almost as quickly as they got married, and the settlement was that Simon had to pay Simone back 50 grand. She never saw a dime of the money. Simon's one movie credit and his biggest claim to fame, besides marrying Brittany Murphy, was his credit in the movie Factory Girl. And it seems Simon sued the production company of that movie and accused them of stealing his script. So even that writing credit is shrouded in like shadiness and suspicion. The production company decided that giving Monjack a screenwriting credit was just easier than having to pay all this money for lawyers and going through the courts and everything and having whatever it would be put on the movie until it was settled. So they according to the producers of Factory Girl, they gave him the credit to kind of shut him up and get him to leave them alone. And he actually had nothing to do with anything of the production, the writing, nothing of that movie Factory Girl. But according to Simon, he wrote the script and they stole it from him. He passed it on as an idea, they rejected it, but then took it and did it anyway and did not give him the credit. His name still remains in the credits for that movie, as far as I know. Many people state that Simon Monjack was just a shady character and a con man of sorts, and he knew that the production company wasn't going to want to go through this lengthy legal battle in court and that he would be able to get this credit without doing any work. So basically, he knew he would be able to steal this credit. This one movie credit is what Simon seemed to build his whole celebrity persona around. And the further I got into my research, the more I realized there is not many people who actually liked Simon. I think out of all the interviews I saw, the only person that I saw talk nothing but good about Simon Monjack was his mother, Linda. Literally everyone else interviewed had at least one negative thing to say about him, and pretty much everyone interviewed did not like him at all and thought very, very low of him. I'm not saying Simon Monjack didn't have friends and family and people that loved him. I'm just saying my research, what's out there publicly, people that had been interviewed since the death, it looks like a lot of people really did not care for him. I'm talking basically in the entertainment industry. He had made a lot of enemies while trying to build up his career. Simon's mother, Linda, said that people got Simon all wrong, and he was actually a brilliant storyteller and writer. But one of his problems, she did admit, was that he tended to use people as stepping stones to get where he wanted to be in his life and career. And she also said he had a hard time separating the truth from reality, whatever that means. Just a few words that were used over and over again to describe Simon Monjack were con man, charlatan, and extortionist. And people said he cut Brittany off from the outside world and basically locked her away, figuratively. There have also been accusations that Monjack had kept Murphy on a constant stream of one drug or another, pharmaceutical or street. It all depended on the day. He always was feeding her something. It's also said that he controlled what she wore, who she spoke to, when she left the house, where she went, what kinds of jobs she took, like which movies, and he also controlled her mind. A lot of the people that knew him and knew the dynamic of his and Brittany's relationship that immediately suspected that he played some kind of role in Brittany's death. Some people believed that since Simon had basically spent his whole life looking for a really good get-rich-quick scheme that would get him a lot of money fast, that marrying Brittany Murphy was his get-rich-quick scheme, the best and most profitable one that Simon could ever want. And Simon Monjack was also described by some as a sociopath. 2 months after her untimely death, Brittany Murphy's toxicology report came back, and it was not what anyone had expected at all. Chief Coroner Ed Winter stated that Brittany Murphy had actually died at the age of 32 of pneumonia. He stated that she was very anemic and had an overdose of over-the-counter medications in her system. He said all 3 of these conditions were contributing factors to her death. For a week to 10 days, Brittany was sick with flu-like symptoms, but she didn't go to the doctor. She didn't go to the hospital or emergency room. She just stayed home and took a continuous stream of over-the-counter medications, and probably some of her prescriptions too. Winter stated that it is possible for a 32-year-old to die this way, also considering Brittany's anemia, which further compromised her immune system. As someone who's anemic, it's something that I know for me, it's easily forgettable. Like, it's not something I think of all the time. If I go to a doctor for some reason and they ask me, do I have any medical conditions? I forget to tell them that I'm anemic because it's not something I think about. It's just not something that noticeably affects me enough. So maybe, you know, Brittany wasn't thinking, or her family wasn't thinking, oh my gosh, she has this anemia. This is even more scary. I certainly wouldn't. Despite the reports of street and prescription drugs by both Brittany and Simon, it surprised many people to learn that neither of these played any kind of prominent role in her death. However, look how that's worded. Neither played any kind of prominent role in her death. That's not to say they weren't in her system. That means that they were there, but they weren't substantial enough to have attributed to her death. Am I right? Let me know what you think about that in the comments. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. Chief Coroner Ed Winter also stated that he believes 100% that Brittany Murphy's death was totally preventable had someone just taken her to the doctor or taken her to the hospital, even drove her through the emergency room. Ed Winter also stated that because of all of the over-the-counter medications Brittany was taking, it was probably making it harder to see what the actual symptoms were because of everything she was taking. Like, she was taking one thing to knock this out, and it was being knocked out, but only for that little amount of time, however long the medication worked for. This could possibly be the reason that neither her mother nor her husband noticed how sick Brittany actually was, and why they didn't force her or try to force her to go to a doctor, the hospital, or the ER. Assuming they're totally innocent here, right? I mean, I have to play devil's advocate. You guys know me. Can't just go around judging people on what everyone else thinks. The media immediately turned on Simon even more. I mean, they were bad enough as it is on him, but some of them were at least still treating him like a grieving husband. Not anymore. Not after the autopsy report was made public and posted throughout the media. His lack of decisive action brought so much scrutiny against himself and Brittany's mom. Why hadn't they done something? People just weren't buying that they didn't notice how sick she was. This death was just so very preventable that people had a hard time wrapping their heads around it. She was so young, and people just couldn't grasp it. She lived with her mother and her husband, 2 people that are supposed to care about you more than almost anyone else, more than anyone else. Her mother claimed to be her soulmate. Why was there no decisive action? Like, look, you are going to the hospital. I just called an ambulance. That's it. People just couldn't reconcile themselves with that, and they were pissed. Again, playing devil's advocate, as someone who hates going to the doctor, I don't like going to the hospital, especially the ER. I can kind of understand this. Maybe she was the same way and she didn't like going to the doctor or the hospital, and they knew this and they weren't trying to put any more stress or pressure on her knowing how sick she was. I mean, nobody thinks they're going to die from what seems like the flu or the common cold even. You know, they didn't know that what her symptoms were. They didn't know what was going on inside her body. And many will say, well, that's why they should have taken her. I know that. But who thinks that your loved one's going to die from being sick with something you take over-the-counter meds to cure? I don't know. While there are many things that make me uncomfortable and suspicious with Simon and Sharon, this just really isn't definitively one of them, because I can understand their reasoning for it. In an attempt to defend himself, very shortly after the toxicology reports came back out and people started turning against him even more, Simon decided to go on national television on CNN to speak with Larry King. He couldn't have made a poorer choice. Sharon Murphy was there with him, sitting right beside him while he was being interviewed by King. It was extremely bizarre, to say the least. I can't show clips because of copyright, but I'm sure you can find Simon Monjack's first interview with Larry King. When asked why he didn't call an ambulance or take her to the doctor or hospital, he said how she had laryngitis and he didn't know what to do because he isn't a doctor. Then he said, quote, "I pray, I don't prescribe," end quote. Yeah, I don't know either. Sharon Murphy, on the other hand, could barely speak during this interview. And again, just observing, not judging, I can't imagine how I would feel if I lost one of my children, especially one that I'm super duper close with. So, especially under these circumstances, I mean, I do feel for the woman. If I was her, I'd probably be orally medicated too. And that's just an assumption, but she definitely looked like she was way over medicated. When asked why he didn't initially want the autopsy, he said something like, quote, "She had a pristine body and it was curvy in all the right places. So why would we want her to be cut up?" End quote. Then, I don't know, like this explanation really took me back. Like she had a pristine, curvy body. I don't know. It's kind of like just a weird explanation. I don't know. Like I said, if you can find the Simon Monjack, Sharon Murphy interview with Larry King, please go and watch at least some of it because it was absolutely insane. Her mother said of originally not wanting the autopsy, quote, "That would have been unfathomable," end quote. And I think what she was speaking of is Simon was saying how he didn't want Brittany's body to be cut into because it was perfect, and the mother was going along with this. This interview was seriously crazy, guys. When Larry King asks Simon to defend himself from the people claiming he was a Svengali, Simon replied, quote, "Svengali? I should be so lucky," end quote. Yeah, he said that. The entire time this interview was going on, Sharon Murphy is sitting next to Simon and she's making all of these insanely bizarre and crazy faces. Like these weird eye movements. And you guys, I'm telling you, not to be like overbearing, please watch some of this interview. Please, if you're interested in this, and I know a lot of you are because this was the most suggested case for strange and suspicious celebrity deaths besides Michael Jackson, please watch some of this interview and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I wish I could put in a clip. I just can't. After the interview with Larry King, which didn't go so well because it had the exact opposite effect on the public in general and even investigators who watched it than Simon had intended, he had wanted to kind of clear the air and defend himself, and he ended up making himself look more dirty, more suspicious, and more strange. So after this train wreck of an interview, he decides to, while people are even more suspicious now, he decides to invite a magazine into the home to tour the, quote, and these are Simon's words, "death house," end quote, of Brittany Murphy. He brought the cameras and the crew into the bathroom and said, quote, "Here is the infamous bathroom," end quote, and then went on to ramble about how much cosmetics and things Brittany had in there. He was seemingly complaining as well about all the money she spent on such things throughout their short marriage. So how much money she spent on things for her hair and makeup. How much of her money she spent. I almost got physically ill watching this. He's like smoking this cigar and smiling. He's playing piano for the, video cameras. And he's going through Brittany's gigantic, I'm so jelly, closets. Also, he pulls out one blouse and says, quote, "Isn't that cute? I've never seen her wear that," end quote. He also describes in kind of too much graphic detail how Brittany had collapsed onto the Dog's Chase lounge. If I said that wrong, I don't know how to pronounce that. He said of the interview with this magazine in his home, quote, "We just had so much fun playing the piano, me falling asleep laying on the ground," end quote. I mean, I guess this could just be in poor taste, but to many people and to most people who saw it, it was downright inappropriate, disrespectful, and even macabre. It was bordering on macabre. On May 23rd, 2010, almost 5 months to the day that Brittany Murphy had tragically passed out and stopped breathing in the bathroom of her Hollywood Hills home, her mother, Sharon Murphy, was once again on the phone calling 911. Simon Monjack had collapsed. For some reason, these two, Brittany Murphy's mother, Sharon, and Brittany Murphy's husband, Simon, are still living together in the same residence 5 months later. Sharon, while she's on the phone with 911, was trying to resuscitate him. And remember, she didn't do it for her own daughter. She did not try to perform CPR on Brittany. Simon did. But she's trying to resuscitate Simon. In this call, she seems pretty calm too. She kind of describes to the dispatcher that Simon has fluid in his mouth. She says he's gurgling, but he's unresponsive, but in a very matter-of-fact terms, just kind of like, reporting what the weather is outside. All of a sudden, though, she seems to be doing chest compressions, and she starts getting hysterical, crying hysterically, and she says, quote, "Baby, come on," through tears. So she's calling him baby. Within 10 minutes, the ambulance arrived, and they tried to resuscitate Simon, but to no avail. And at 9:45 p.m., he was pronounced dead. Chief Coroner Ed Winter was also in charge of Simon's autopsy and said he felt it was strange being in the house for another death so soon after the first one. What was even stranger, though, and this was like the most ick part of this for me, not only were these two still living together, they were sharing a bed. They were sleeping together in the master bedroom in the same bed that Simon and Brittany slept in. Simon and Brittany's mother were now sleeping in together. This was evidenced by the fact that on the one side of the bed, the nightstand held Simon's medications, and on the other side, Sharon's, just as they had found 5 months earlier, where on Simon's side of the bed, on the nightstand were his medications, and on Brittany's side, on the nightstand, were hers. They also found prescription bottles with the name Sharon Monjack on them. Many prescriptions for other random names as well. When Winter was trying to conduct the initial interview with Sharon about what had happened leading up to Simon's unexpected death, she kept repeating over and over again, quote, "He died of a broken heart," end quote. Also, when Winter confronted her about her scripts being on the other side of the bed, she admitted that the two did in fact share the same bed because they were, quote, "comforting each other," end quote, by sleeping in the same bed. The same bed that he slept with your daughter, his wife, in just 5 months earlier. In interviews following Simon's death, though, she denies ever sleeping in the same bed with him, and she also denies that any prescriptions were found in the name of Sharon Monjack. So she's basically calling Ed Winter, the coroner, a liar. He's lying about this for whatever reason. I personally believe, and this is just my opinion, even though many others share this opinion, 100% that Simon and Sharon were sleeping together and involved in a sexual and intimate relationship. The simple fact Sharon moved her things out of her bedroom, which she had had for the entire 2 years leading up to Brittany and Simon's deaths, into her son-in-law and deceased daughter's bedroom, that just does it for me. Why would you do that? You have your own space that you were comfortable with. You can easily comfort each other, watching a movie on the couch, giving each other a hug or something, right? It just doesn't add up to me. If you're sleeping in the same bed with somebody, most likely you're screwing them. I mean, I know it depends on the circumstances. I'd hate to give that general statement, but in this particular case, let's just focus. I think they were doing it. That's just my opinion. I'm not stating it as a fact. Whether or not an affair was going on while Brittany was alive, I can't say. I mean, I don't know. I couldn't even speculate as to whether it was going on when she was alive, because I don't know these people personally. I just know what's being reported and what I go by what I believe. I mean, I don't believe everything that I've heard about Simon or Sharon or Brittany, right? I have to go by what I believe. And from what I hear that I do believe the two had a sexual relationship at least after Brittany had passed, which is sick and disgusting. People have even speculated that Brittany found out that Sharon and Simon were having an affair and Sharon and Simon decided to get rid of them. That's all very James Bond to me. I don't know. Simon, even though described as a con man, doesn't seem like a very successful one up until he convinced Brittany Murphy to marry him. If you look at Sharon Murphy, I, don't want to make, again, a generalization, but is she the mastermind type? Watch the Larry King interview. Simon's mother, Linda Monjack, says there's no way at all her son was having any kind of sexual or intimate physical relationship with Sharon Murphy. She said the only kind of women her son had ever been with throughout his entire life were young and beautiful, And she said, quote, "I rest my case," end quote. So basically saying Sharon Murphy is not young and beautiful, and therefore Simon Monjack, her son, would want nothing to do with this woman. I get the impression from the interviews that I've watched that many people also do not like Sharon Murphy, and specifically Linda Monjack. On July 22nd, 2010, Ed Winter announced the findings for the autopsy of Simon Monjack. He concluded that the cause of death was acute pneumonia and anemia. These are the same exact things as Brittany, who died in the same house 5 months earlier, died of. However, Simon Monjack was in very poor health and weighed in excess of 300 pounds. Brittany Murphy weighed maybe 115. Brittany was also young and healthy. The media and the public were definitely going crazy, having a field day trying to figure out how the hell these two both succumbed to the exact same things within 5 months of each other. Brittany's father, Angelo, in particular, became even more suspicious about some form of foul play possibly going on after Simon passed away in pretty much the same manner as Brittany, especially in such a close proximity of time. He absolutely refuses to accept the cause of death given by coroner Ed Winter. He says that regardless of what the autopsy report says, it does not say how his daughter dies. He believes wholeheartedly that there was some kind of foul play involved, at least in Brittany's death, and says there's no possible way the cause was accidental. He's just not buying it, not for anything. Angelo enlisted the help of a very famous forensic pathologist, and I see this guy as a consultant constantly he is very, world-renowned, world-famous, this guy. Dr. Cyril Wecht. I see him in other cases. I see him in a lot of research. I see him on TV all the time. So this guy is no joke. He's the real deal. He's also a medical legal consultant. And he stated that while it's very rare for someone her age, meaning Brittany being 32, the listed causes of death seem to be legitimate and rather mundane. He said it's even more rare because she was, quote, affluent and not living in a tent in the middle of a park somewhere, end quote. He actually said, quote, it's unfathomable how this happened to a Hollywood star, end quote. Angelo Bertolotti, however, did actually uncover some very serious information regarding Brittany's cause of death. He discovered that in some cases, though pretty rare, people who have a cause of death listed as anemia had actually been victims of arsenic poisoning, and the body just recognized it as anemia because arsenic was not tested for in the toxicology. It's not something that's automatically tested for. It has to be a special order test, like an extra. Once he finds out that Brittany's hair was never tested for substances, he files a petition for her hair so he can have it tested by an outside lab. After a small legal battle of which I have no real info on, and plus it's not really that relevant how the battle went down, just the results, right? He won and he received the hair samples. Angelo sent the hair samples to a lab in Colorado and sent the results to Dr. Wecht for him to look over and report back to Angelo with the findings either way. Either Angelo was right or Angelo was wrong. Angelo just wanted to know the truth about what happened to his daughter. Dr. Wecht said that the results from the lab in Colorado were, quote, very shocking, off the charts, end quote. So, this is in November of 2013 when Dr. Wecht examines the results of the Colorado lab, and here's what they found from testing the samples of Brittany's hair for toxic substances and heavy metals which could have possibly contributed to her death. According to Dr. Wecht, this report from this outside lab, this independent lab in Colorado, showed 10 different heavy metals in significant amounts in her bloodstream or her body at the time of her death. He also stated that in several instances, the levels are well beyond what is permissible by the World Health Organization. He went so far as to state that in the entirety of his very lengthy career, he had never seen anything like this and knows of no other cases where the levels have been so high, at least none that have been reported. So what does that mean? Well, the effects of these heavy metals are dizziness, lethargy, cramps, sweating, coughing, and among other things. And all of the other things and these things are what Brittany Murphy was suffering from. These were her flu-like symptoms in the weeks leading up to her death. Wecht said he was extremely concerned as to why these metals, these levels, were not in the initial report, the one that came from the Hollywood Medical Examiner's office. He also stated that for these metals to have been grown out in Brittany's hair, she had to have been ingesting them for several months, for quite a while, leading up to the day of her death. It wasn't like a one-shot deal. This was given consistently and constantly in her body. She was ingesting it somehow, these metals. There's no way her body just produced them. Not in these levels. Angelo Bertolotti believes wholeheartedly that Brittany, his daughter Brittany Murphy, was murdered by someone in the house, either her own mother, her own husband, or both of them in cahoots together. Did Simon know too much and Sharon got rid of him too? Angelo Bertolotti and Dr. Cyril Wecht petitioned the court to have Brittany's body exhumed for further tests to be run to see if this was in fact the case, but legally they were blocked. I really don't understand this because legal authority of Brittany's remains, I guess, and her estate were given to her mother after Simon had died. I don't know if they were always with her mother or if they were passed to her mother after Simon died, but either way, Sharon Murphy had the final say on this exhumation. But she was also a suspect. She was also one of the accused that Angelo and Dr. Wecht, too, were allegedly accusing that she had done something. So how is somebody who's a suspect legally allowed to block the further gathering of evidence which may either have them indicted or exonerate them, which may either prove them innocent or guilty? So basically, if she did do it, and I'm not saying she did, I really don't know one way or another, she has legal authority to say, yeah, you can't collect any more evidence. And the police are like, oh, no, okay, come on, man. That, to me, makes Sharon Murphy very suspicious. Why would you not want to go to the edge of the earth, the ends of the earth, to find out how your 32-year-old, pretty healthy, 115-pound movie star, beautiful, amazing, talented daughter died? Why would you not want to know that? Angelo, again, he thought that Sharon either poisoned Brittany herself or was complicit with Simon doing it. And he believes that that's why Sharon blocked him and Dr. Wecht from having access to Brittany's body, from having an exhumation. A lot of people speculate that Sharon did in fact kill both Brittany and Simon, that she and Simon have this love affair and Brittany either found out or something and she and Simon killed Brittany, and then 5 months later, you know, she thought that she was going to go to jail. She killed Simon. I don't really understand that theory. I don't know if it works for me. I'd really have to break it down, but there is a theory out there that does work for me. Let's just keep in mind that Sharon Murphy now is in, you know, she has Brittany Murphy's estate. Remember how she loved the money that came along with Angelo more than she loved Angelo. So I just keep that part of her character. I mean, who doesn't love money? But that part of her character in the back of my head when I consider this. But it turns out too that Simon and Brittany were planning a move which would have happened very shortly after their deaths. They wanted to have kids. They were planning on moving to New York City. Simon absolutely loved the city. Brittany loved it too. It was closer to where she grew up in Edison, New Jersey. And they were planning on moving to New York City alone. That means without Sharon. I don't know if they were going to set her up with a place to live or what was going on there. I really have no idea. But a lot of people say Sharon had kind of become the third wheel in the relationship. She was always around. They were essentially leaving her behind. Of course, Sharon denies all the claims that she could have been responsible for either death. You know, she's claiming innocent here. She writes an open letter to the press which describes the independent hair analysis testing done by the Colorado lab, quote, woefully inadequate, end quote. And she also attacks Angelo by saying all he wants is Sharon out of the way so he can get his hands on Brittany's money. I'm a pretty good judge of character, I'd like to think. I know I am, actually. And right off the bat, I have far more suspicions of Sharon Murphy than I do of Angelo. He just seems like a kindly guy who kind of maybe reconciled with his old life, kind of older now, wiser, and he loves his daughter and wants to know what happened to her. I think more suspicion falls on Sharon and even Simon, but remember, that's just my opinion. Sharon Murphy has not been arrested or charged with anything related to either death. Dr. Wecht remained vague, but said he is disappointed that her death, which is a huge mystery, will remain that way because of the lack of cooperation from her mother. In 2017, because of being stonewalled by Sharon, who had the law on her side, and because of his own rapidly failing health, Angelo had to just give up on the search for answers as to what happened to his daughter. Regardless, this was the death of someone very beautiful and talented, and it's tragic all around when anyone dies so unnecessarily and also so young. And there are never going to be, you know, exact answers because someone who should be a suspect, in my opinion, is able to legally block the further gathering of evidence. And I'm stuck on that. It makes me pretty mad. Wecht said Simon died of just poor health and natural disease. Ed Winter, the chief medical examiner who did both autopsies, said he did what he felt was, quote, sufficient, end quote, and tested urine and blood. And since there were no heavy metals found there, he didn't feel the need to test hair. He says he is absolutely certain, without a doubt, that Brittany Murphy died of pneumonia, which he had originally reported in the autopsy. That's all I have for you today, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this one. It was definitely well requested. I have a lot coming up this week. I can't wait to get Hot Mess Recovery back up and share with you guys. Thank you so much for watching and spending this time with me. Let me know what you think in the comments. Please give this video a big thumbs up. Guys, I'm at like 500 and something views and 20 something likes. What's the problem? Give me that thumbs up. Please hit the like button. Smack it. Okay? Subscribe if you haven't already. I'm still trying to get to that 1,000. Be kind to each other. It doesn't cost anything. It can make you feel so good. Also, please check out the description box for some important links and some entertaining ones too. I'm going to put a link for the show, the series that Steve Stockton and I are doing on Dezombified's channel, Real Evil. I'll put a link to one of those. I will put a link to one of our fireside chats, which we do every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Dezombified is every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. And Friday nights, I usually do campfire stories at 7 p.m. Eastern with Steve. I'll put a link to one of those in there. And the links to financially support the channel, a link to my PayPal, a link to my Patreon, which there will be more content for just patrons only coming out this month, definitely. And if you donate once through PayPal, I will give you access that month to the Patreon only content. If none comes out, it'll be the next month. I will hook you guys up. Guys, let's get me to that 1,000. Please, if you can support me financially, knowing that I'm not monetized, I don't make any money off of anything I do across the board. So if you could just help me out, I'd really appreciate it. If you can't support me financially, support me by clicking on one of the links, by sharing, by liking, by subscribing, by coming to the live streams and saying, "What's up, Gemma? Saw your video. It was awesome, girl. Just showing you some love." All right, guys, I love you so much. And again, be kind, have your best day, have your best night, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.